To order, I do want to announce that some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. When speaking, be sure to speak directly into a microphone so that all comments are heard and the record of the meeting is accurate. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. The public may also indicate their intent to provide public comment remotely by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting. The public will also have an opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or via Zoom from the 5th floor conference room of the municipal office building. Please be advised that public comments shall be allowed during each agenda item. Comments should be limited to the item at hand and per the commission rules of procedure should not include any rude or derogatory remarks, reflections as to the integrity, abusive comments, and statements as to the motives and personalities. I will now call the meeting of the Public Works and Safety Committee for Monday, May 20th, 24 to order, and I would ask the clerk to please call roll.
Roll call. Henry. Lopez. We have an absent memo. Burns.
Here.
Stites.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would now, Clerk, do we have any revisions for this agenda this evening?
No revisions.
Thank you. Committee, we have no minutes for approval, so we will proceed forward to our committee agenda. And Madam Clerk, just for clarity, do we have Mr. Wakes as a replacement? I know Ms. Henry has submitted her resignation from the committee.
The mayor has not appointed anyone as of right now.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to see if that had occurred yet. Committee, our item for discussion tonight is a resolution. It's the fiscal year 2024 Kansas Department on Health and Environment All Hands on Deck grant. It is a grant to improve identification and response to drug endangered children from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. The grant amount is up to $100,000. There are no matching funds required. And I will recognize Laura Cromwell from our police department to make the presentation. But is Ms. Crom, please come forward, and if you will state your name, we'll get you put into the record. Please come up and sit up here at the table. We may have questions for you. And just, if you'll mention your, state your name, so we'll have that as a point of record. My name is Richard Harris. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Please continue. Work under Deputy Chief Ray Nunez.
I can't hear him.
There we go, Mike. We got it.
Okay, it's on now. Okay.
Thank
I'll
you.
start again. I work under Deputy Chief Ray Nunez and Chief Oakman, and I'm in charge of the Special Investigations Division to include the narcotics. Deputy Chief Nunez sends his regrets, for he is at home taking care of a sick child. I'm here in his place because the police department is seeking approval to apply for and accept funding under the FY24 KDHE All Hands on Deck grant program. The DEC program, which stands for Drug Endangered Children in Kansas, aims to improve identification and awareness of, as well as the response to drug endangered children in our community, specifically those found in environments where drugs are present. The police department will be requesting $100,000 to support additional youth program at the Police Athletic League, as well as supplies to support these youths, to include care bags for identified children. In addition, the police department will be creating a fentanyl awareness and educational video that we will be advertising on social media platforms. Lastly, funds will be used to send officers involved in the project to DEC trainings The project period will extend from July 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. There is no match requirement for this grant program. And that's all that I have for the presentation.
Wonderful. With the grant that will be brought in for the kid, as we all know, the fentanyl is a scourge right now, and I don't need to tell anybody in the department. Chief Oakman, pleased to have you this evening.
All right,
But we're just
another meeting.
we're just getting started. Please grab a microphone. If there's any comments you'd like to make in reference to the grant, please do so.
Okay, and I think Harris has probably summed it up for you, but one of the things we really want to work on that aftercare part of this with the children, and we have a lot of resources such as PAL and some other things, but we just want to do more. And I know that's something that we're really focusing on in the future with the health department, is the aftercare part. Because I think we really got the education, prevention, and enforcement down. Now we need to make sure we're having resources for that aftercare.
Wonderful. As stating, I know that there's a lot of concerns throughout the community in reference to our youth and that has occurred with fentanyl. There is a couple of groups that are presently working out in the community to try to educate the youth as much as possible. And I do want to share with them what you shared, Mr. Harris, in reference to the July 24th through September 25th video that you're going to produce. That will go out. Will that be to the school districts? How will that go out?
We will put that out to anybody that wants it, but Facebook, social media, I believe we're putting it out to regular media outlets as well.
Wonderful. The educational process, and it's important that we address that. Committee, are there any questions? Anyone online?
Kane, move for approval.
Stite second, and I just also have just a quick comment, Chair.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, Chief and Harris, there. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but thank you for all you're doing to continue the education for the drug problems that we do have in our community. And I think that getting started with the youth is where we got to make that change. And again, thank you for your continued work on this issue.
Thank you, guys. Before we go any further and accept the motion in the second, I do need to ask if there's anyone appearing in person who would like to address this item. Is there anyone online?
No hands raised.
Thank you. Has anyone communicated via letter?
No.
Thank you. With that, I will accept the motion. We do have a motion and a second to accept the grant. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Burns,
Aye.
Stites,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have a second part of our agenda tonight. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. And I do want to echo the comments that were made by the committee members. Appreciate all you do in our community, watching over us and our children. Thank you. The second part of our agenda this evening is we have a public appearance by Mr. Thomas Barnes regarding the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department and Animal Control. At this time, I will recognize Mr. Barnes to present his comments. You will have 5 minutes to address the committee. Mr. Barnes, welcome. Name and address, please, and make sure the green light is on your microphone, please.
Good evening. My name is Thomas E. Barnes. I submitted some information about what I'm going to talk about tonight. Hope you already have it. And I did say I'd give you a minute to take a look at it. But if I can go forward now, did you all take a look at it? I sent it to the clerk. Anyway, if you're ready, I'm going to tersely identify myself and my complaint also as my outcry of the community. Many people have talked to me about the same problem. Many of them are afraid to come before you and talk about it. I'm I'm a Army PFC veteran who served on standby in the state to protect this country, which consisted of three factions: Vietnam crisis, Fidel Castro crisis, Cuban crisis, of which, and the George Wallace, can't forget that, the bigot crisis in Alabama, of which he put biting dogs on Black men, women, and children. He put firemen with water hoses that spit out water like fire. He put policemen on horses that whipped Black men, women, and children, until some unconsciously with pleasure. My complaint of vicious dog attacks on false addresses and statements is only one urgent problem we have in this community. My complaint about police receiving false promises at my address is another serious problem among several others. I could have been killed. Remember July the 28th, 2006, a 71-year-old woman was bitten and killed by dogs. Remember, me being attacked by drunken policemen created a disparity thereafter and destroyed my family. You read about in the comments, I was beaten unconscious continually. When I awakened, they beat me again. I'm very fortunate to have feelings in my left side of my body. Now I know all policemen are that way, but we need to take those people out that are destructive. More interrogation, incarceration, and denial of all men's constitutional right is not the urgent problem. It's not the answer. I'm requesting that you, the servants of the people, respond appropriately. For the people, according to their outcries, which is also found in the Bible, in Nehemiah 5, Genesis 18, verses 22 to 33. I thank you for letting me speak to you. Hopefully you will hear this. I'm also a minister of the gospel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Any questions or comments from the committee? Commissioner Kane, Commissioner Stites, any comments? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Barnes, thank you. Your letter has been made a matter of record, and I appreciate you being here this evening. Thank you for help bringing this to our attention once again. Committee, this was for information only, and it has been advanced to those that need to see the letter. And with that, that concludes our meeting this evening. I want to entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a
So move.
motion, second. Do we have a second? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Burns.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That concludes our work. Please stick around for the Administration and Human Resources Committee. Following probably 20 minutes, or at 7:20, 5 minutes. Do you want to go right into it? 5 minutes, 5-minute break. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance this evening. Mr. Harris, Chief Oakman, thank you very much for your kind words. Mr. Barnes, we appreciate your participation this evening.
Oh, then if that's okay, our staff, are y'all ready? Ready to go? Here we go. Just you and I. We have Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Kane online. Okay, we are ready to go with Administration and Human Services Standing Committee, so I will welcome you all to our AHS meeting for May 20th. And before I call our meeting to order, I'll announce that some of our committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely, as well as some on site. And all participants joining remotely should please mute their devices when not speaking to avoid background noise during the meeting. Make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak so that the public observing knows who is speaking. And also, please speak directly into a microphone so that our comments are heard and the record of our meeting is accurate. The public's allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those are included in our record of the meeting. The public can also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting our clerk's office by 5 o'clock the Thursday prior to this meeting. And of course, also has an opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or Zoom or here in the fifth floor conference room. Public comment will be allowed during each agenda item and should be limited to the item at hand and per our commission rules of procedure, and should not include any rude or derogatory remarks, reflections as to integrity, abusive comments, or statements as to motives or personalities. And with that, I will call our meeting to order. Administration and Human Services Standing Committee for Monday, May 20th, 2024, and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Ramirez. We have an absent memo. Kane.
Here.
Bynum.
Clerk, do we have revisions to our agenda tonight?
No revisions.
And there are no minutes to approve, so we will get straight to our singular committee agenda item. And that is Human Relations Policy Updates. And I will turn this over to Renee Ramirez. It's the only item we have tonight, and it's two different resolutions with updates to our Human Resource Guide regarding take-home vehicles, and also a second resolution revising the current residency requirement because of workday. So I'll let you explain that that's not really a dramatic departure from the current residency. It's a workday issue. So Ms. Ramirez, I'll turn it to you, our Director of Human Resources.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening, Commissioners. Renee Ramirez, Director of Human Resources. This evening before you, we're bringing the first of a few policies that we're revising in the Human Resources Guide. The first that we're going to speak of is going to be Section 2.7, the residency requirement. Shakiva Christian, HR Manager, will go over some of the modifications to that policy. I do want to state that in no way do the revisions of this policy change the requirement of unified government employees having to live within Wyandotte County. The second policy is going to be in Section 6.6. It's a take-home vehicle policy. This is a proposed new policy that we have not had before in our Human Resources Guide. A few years back, after we found the legislative auditor was doing an audit on take-home vehicles, and we didn't have like one overarching policy for take-home vehicles for the different departments here at the unified government. So HR halted their progress on developing this policy until the legislative auditor finished the audit. And then we picked that back up and brought stakeholders in for feedback. Dave Wimberly, our risk manager, will be going through the details of that policy. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shakiva Christian.
Good evening, Shakiva Christian, HR Manager. Just to go over the proposed changes to the residency requirement policy, as stated earlier, there is no proposal to change the requirements for employees to reside in Wyandotte County. Largely, this policy is being reviewed for the new processes under Workday. There are a few changes to that verbiage-wise that I will point out to you. But largely, the reason for the review is due to Workday. There's no more paper affidavits for residency in the due to the Workday process. And all of the acknowledges regarding residency are now automated. All of the documentations concerning how that is uploaded or acknowledged is all through our Workday process. There are three things that I do want to point out with respect to with respect to content changes. And that is that we did clarify that new hires that do live in Wyandotte County must provide proof of residency, just like all other employees or anyone that's living outside of Wyandotte County in their probationary period that would then move into Wyandotte County as a result of having a 12-month period to relocate. So if you do live in Wyandotte County at the time of hire, you still will be required to provide that proof at the time of hire. For those new employees that do not live in Wyandotte County at the time of hire, we want those employees at the 6-month period to provide human resources with an update of their progress. And we just want to make sure that that's occurring because it does sometimes take a little bit of time to establish if you're moving from one county to the other, you're putting houses on the market. We want to make sure that those things are being worked on while they're in that 12-month period that they have. So we included that information in the policy to make sure employees that are new to Wyandotte County and new to the unified government are making those arrangements to be in compliance. The other change with respect to new hires is those employees that have a lease outside of Wyandotte County, they must notify human resources if they are going to renew a lease that's outside of Wyandotte County and the reasons for that. And we would review each of those on a case-by-case basis. And then finally, we will now start having all employees acknowledge annually their current addresses and making sure that they have proper documentation for where they reside. And that's the gist of that policy. Any questions about that?
I have a question as far as the paper affidavit going paperless, but I'm a new hire either way, moving into the county or I already live here. I'm apparently uploading some document electronically, right? So we're still having the evidence, just keeping less paper. Is that correct?
Yes, Renee Ramirez, Director of Human Resources. Yes, that is correct. You're still having to provide that information just in a different format.
Questions?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you for the information. I believe one of the comments I've heard from your department that one of the challenges for hiring new staff is this residential policy. And I know I've heard the same from the school district and let's see, the police department, fire department. So, I mean, let me ask another question. How long has this policy been in place?
Renee Ramirez, Director of Human Resources. This policy has been in place for several years.
At the beginning of the unified government when things were changed?
Yes.
That went. Mhm. Okay.
The city has always had the residency requirement within Kansas City, Kansas. When we consolidated on October 1st of 1997 is when the merger occurred, when it broadened the area to include Wyandotte County, which is how we got Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. So employees would then have the opportunity to live within Wyandotte County instead of just the city of Kansas City, Kansas, because we were unified at that point.
Okay. Um,
Just maybe, Commissioner, one point of clarification. You mentioned school district. So school districts don't
I
have,
know, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, school districts don't have residency policies where our local government is the only one in Wyandotte County that has a residency policy.
Okay,
So just to clarify on that.
okay. Sorry about that. I think they used to though. Maybe not.
I couldn't, I'm not sure if they did or not, but they certainly, none of the school districts have a residency policy currently.
You know, Dr. Hill, what I think I remember is that they had, like certain administration levels and higher were required to live in Kansas City, Kansas. And if I'm not mistaken, our Board of Public Utilities has a residency requirement. Is that not correct?
Correct, as a sub agency of the unified government.
Sub-agency of us. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Hill, I'm sorry.
So with that said, could we do something different? I'm just
I-
asking,
Commissioner Bynum at large.
Okay, sorry.
I will say, I think it's always worth looking at these policies. We've had presentations brought to us by the fire chief, the police chief, even the sheriff, to speak to us about the constraints it puts on hiring. And we have in the past even asked this question on our community survey. And we've used those survey results to guide policymaking. And the year that we did ask that question, which I believe was probably 2 years ago, those results came back from the citizens far more in support of keeping the policy than removing it. And so it's a difficult decision for us to make, and it's also a policy decision that's going to have to come to the commission. Ultimately, we would be the ones that would bring forward a change. So, but I feel like the citizen survey was largely the reason why no change has occurred yet. Because when we saw the results of that, it gave us a certain comfort level to continue the policy. So we're going to have to really, I think, do some more study and research and ponder before we do make a change to something like that. Thanks for asking the question. It's a good question, and it's a good conversation to have.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. I appreciate that. And I hope we can do some further surveys or whatever we need to do, because we complain. We just heard a citizen complain about a particular item in the previous meeting, and maybe part of that even is because of lack of staff. I don't know, but I'm just saying, if we're going to be proactive, that might be an area where we can make some changes and get more movement for improved services here at the UG. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a point well taken.
We have Commissioner Kane and Davis with their hand raised.
Excellent. Do you know which one raised their hand first?
Kane was first, Davis to follow.
And then Commissioner Davis, please.
All right, and exactly what Commissioner Bynum said, we did the survey and it was overwhelmingly saying that if they have these good jobs with these good benefits, that they should be required to stay here. And if we need to do another survey, I'm okay with that. But the number was so large saying that they should stay versus not staying. And I also think we've done a lot better job. The fire department's hired a bunch. The sheriff department has hired some more. So should we do another survey? Absolutely. But in the past, and we've done this more than once, They have said, no, we just assume they stay.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So couple of comments and then a question. So regarding the residency requirement, I do think more engagement is needed. I have heard comments and that there's some data out there. It might have, I don't know if it was 2022, it might have been 2020 or 2018 community survey. I don't even know if we're still doing those anymore. But I do think getting an updated opinion would be very beneficial. I've had conversations with folks in throughout Wyandotte County that are on both sides of this issue. What I will say is there are a lot of our peers that are still struggling to hire that do not have a residency requirement. The DA got rid of the residency requirement, which is within his right. And so that is the other thing to consider. I do think we should have a data-driven conversation and shouldn't just be whether or not you live in Wyandotte County. We really have to weigh the costs and see if school districts or others that have gotten rid of this residency policy are actually doing better, as opposed to just saying, well, if we got rid of it, it would. Casey Mill got rid of theirs and they're still struggling to hire. They just increased the police department. They just increased the pay to $65,000, right? So there are other things that should be considered. When I worked for the city of Lawrence, for example, the change that was made was if you were a department head, you had to live there or up, right? So there are other conversations that can be had about this. I don't think it's kind of black and white, but I do think more updated data is needed. Regarding what we have before us for the change, if my packet is accurate, and I'm looking at the residency requirement policy, so it's section 2A, it has a change that implies, at least with my reading, that and maybe I need to keep reading, but based upon that amended sentence, it is implying that only those administered by the county administrator, that's a UG employee, would have to abide by the residency requirement. And then I see a strikeout for the executive and the mayor's office. So maybe I need to keep reading or I missed something, but is this policy saying that the mayor's office no longer has to require a residency, like residency for the unified government, or am I misreading that?
Commissioner Davis, this is Commissioner Bynum, and I am looking at my packet and I don't see that at all. So I don't know if we're looking at two different packets, Alan.
If you keep going, there's a red line version in your packet.
Oh, there sure is. I'm so sorry. I thought I had scrolled to the end. Okay, so 2A.
Shakiva,
Yes,
sorry,
please.
Commissioner Shakiva, Christian Unified Government. I think it was struck to reflect that the employees are employed under the county administrator versus CEO. But certainly we can take
To me,
note.
the question that Commissioner Davis brings up, and you will have to tell me if I'm right or wrong, but if I am the mayor CEO, I make my own hires in my office and they work for me. Is that right or wrong? Or are they under the direction of our county administrator?
That's, your understanding is correct. They work under the mayor, those in the mayor's office.
And so if we strike or the chief executive mayor, we're in effect eliminating their residency requirement. Would that be true legal?
That's correct, the way it's worded. Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
do we have a member of the mayor's office that can provide some clarity or, so, I mean, I don't know if this is a preference of theirs, I don't want to speak, or for staff, can someone provide some information as to how this came about or what the reasoning is behind this? I'm curious.
Was that brought as any suggestion from our mayor's office?
No, no, ma'am.
It was brought within the HR division?
Correct.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just add, I think it's in part this understanding that we have now with where the DA, for example, can set his own residency policy. So there is a difference for elected officials. And this is really reflecting that organizationally, the civil service, if you will, of the unified government reports up and through the county administrator. And so this policy is really applicable to that. But the constitutional officers have their own latitude to have a residency policy or not.
Now I'm going to push back on that a little bit because it's my understanding that the DA's explanation for why he was able to do that was because he is basically an officer of the state.
That's true, but also because he's an elected official, he can set his own policy. Similarly, the sheriff, he's an elected official. He could set his own policy. Technically, his employees wouldn't have to comply with our unified government policy.
Committee, I'm going to suggest leaving or the chief executive mayor in the wording of section 2A. That's my suggestion.
We have Commissioner Kane with his hand raised.
Commissioner Kane.
Well, I gotta push back myself. I know the sheriff's department can do certain things, but I don't think that's one of them. And something this big, I think we should have on trees to discuss how we should go about doing this and whether we want to do another survey or so. Unless they're saying it's just simple enough we're not going to move anything right now. And this is just something to kind of update what we're doing and then do a survey later. I'm okay with that too.
Well, I appreciate that. I would say that in looking at the strike throughs, and I had read it in the section above, so I'm reading it again with the strike throughs, and nothing had bothered me about it when I was reading it without the strike throughs. And so the rest of what you bring to me is acceptable, if you will. But I am questioning removing the CEO mayor because I believe, and again, it's going to be an opinion, that employees working for our mayor should live in Wyandotte County. If in fact our policy is you need to live in Wyandotte County to work for the unified government, then I don't know why we would carve out the top elected position within that government. Committee?
Commissioner Davis has his hand raised as well.
Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you to the public for bearing with us. I agree with you, Chairwoman. I think that, I mean, what has been brought to us, I think is good, and it cleans up a lot of things. I see the workday mentioned as well. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but I'm absolutely not for that, given that latitude. I do not see the mayor or the county executives or the chief executive officer as a constitutional office in the same way that the DA or the election commissioner or the sheriff is. And so with that, I think it just makes sense that if you work for the mayor or the chief executive officer of your community, that you have to live here, that is not optional. I don't think that should be optional. And so I would be in favor of everything else, but I would not be in favor of that particular strikeout. And I do agree that a larger conversation on residency and a more comprehensive study on residency should take place. I don't necessarily think that means we can't make a decision tonight, though.
I would agree with you, and I appreciate that. I would be willing to. Commissioner Hill, do you have comments here?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would be willing to take a motion accepting the changes with the exception of 2A, leaving in the phrase "or the chief executive mayor of the unified government," and then adopting the rest of the policy as presented. If someone would be
You
willing,
doing that in the form of a motion?
please.
Well,
Would
I
you
asked
make-
you if you were doing it in the form of a motion.
Oh, I would be willing to accept you doing that in the form of a motion.
Okay. I'll make the motion exactly the way you said.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
We have to have the public forum before the motion,
Oh, okay.
public comment.
Okay, well then we'll hold on that motion for just a moment. And we've had committee comments, so we will ask if there were any comments received from the public.
No comments received.
Okay, and is there anyone online from the public that wishes to speak?
Yes, we have one hand raised.
Okay,
For
please.
AJL. Please state your name and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
This is Angela Lawson.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, and I just wanted to say that the statutes are different for each of the elected's offices. The sheriff's employees do have to follow the personnel codes.
Okay.
So that was what I just wanted to provide clarity on, but
Okay, so
those state statutes vary per elected office.
Ah, okay. So within, for example, within the DA's purview, per state statute, he did have the latitude, but within the sheriff and those statutes, that elected official does not have the latitude.
Right, those, correct. Those are very different. I haven't pulled up the district attorney's one, but that is my recollection of his, but I just double checked the sheriffs and they do have to follow.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. And Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, just another question. I know we're moving forward with the motion and a second now, but when will we come back to this and have this conversation in more detail?
I think that is a request that should be made to our mayor and our administrator. Because perhaps it is a discussion at a special session, more than likely. So it would not hinder the work here, but as Commissioner Kane, I think also indicated, and even Commissioner Davis, it is worthy of more conversation. But I think it's a request that's going to go through our mayor and our administrator.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk, are there other hands up online? Is there anyone in the audience present that would, Chief, please? You may come forward if you like. Come up to the table and take the microphone and speak to us, please.
Real quick, only comment I had was on 6 month. That is new. And most of our people at 6 months, they're not nowhere near ready to move in because they takes them 5 months to get out of the academy. So that would be putting additional pressure on them when they have a year, and we're requiring them to give something in 6 months.
And for the record, if after 6 months, a new hire has not relocated to Wyandotte County, they will need to provide Human Resources a written update advising their progress.
Yeah, that's new. That's a new
Do
thing.
you think that's an undue burden?
I think so for us. Now, I don't know about the rest of the departments.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Renee. Is that an email from me to you saying I've looked at these 10 apartments?
So what we're looking for here is just basically that, something from the new hire that basically says, you know, I've started looking at apartments or looking at different locations on where to relocate in Wyandotte County. I think what we're trying to avoid is that new hires actually sending information for extensions in month 11 and no progress has been made.
I don't want to assume anything, but sometimes it sounds like it's because we haven't made any progress because we haven't tried.
That's correct.
And Chief, to your point, I'm in the academy, so it's hard for me to find something in a 6-month time when 5 of the 6 months I'm in the academy.
Correct.
Okay.
And if we give them, I mean, we give them 12 months. I mean, if they move in, 11 months and 15 days, they get 12 months.
That's right.
And what it's, and I understand, I agree with Renee 100%. But I think what it does is it's still cutting into that. We're not trying to expand the residency, we're trying to restrict it. Just something to think about.
Commissioners, any thoughts on that comment?
Commissioner Davis has his hand raised.
Commissioner Davis?
So in line with that, and how I'm reading this, it is not necessarily saying if you haven't moved here in 6 months, you can't work here. What I'm reading is if after 6 months you haven't, like, within 6 months, we need you to give us some idea of what the progress has been. I would be amenable to changing that to 9 months. That to accommodate, and this is just an idea off the fly, committee, but 9 months to accommodate such situations where, particularly for folks getting out of the academy, you get those additional 3 months to advise on progress. And then of course you have, another 3 months. If you're at 9, right, to get to 12, you have another 3 months to actually move. So that would be an idea. I'd love to hear what other folks think. I'm curious for Chief Oakman if that does satisfy some of those concerns.
Chief Oakman?
I agree 100%.
Thank you very much.
I was thinking the exact same thing, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So committee, that would be a modification of,
Are we done with, are we done with the public?
You let me double check. Thank you, Commissioner Kane. Are there others that want to speak on the item? Online or
hands
in
raised.
person? Okay, Commissioner Kane.
Okay. I modify my motion from 6 months to 9 months.
Okay, so the motion, if I could restate it, would include removal of the strikeout in A2A in putting the words "or the chief executive mayor of the unified government" back into that section of the policy. Into C, we would modify if after 9 months a new hire has not relocated. Commissioner Kane, is that acceptable as your motion?
Perfect.
And is there a second?
David, second.
Any further discussion? Clerk, let's have roll, please.
Roll call. Hill.
No.
Davis.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion's 3-1, it fails.
So committee, because the motion fails, it's 3-1 in favor of. However, in order for an item to move forward for adoption by full committee, it requires a minimum of 4 votes in favor. So what that means is that this is going to have to either come back in some new form. Casey, please enlighten us on next potential steps. Or I guess it's possible that there just won't be a revision.
Well, I think that the department can take into consideration the comments tonight and then bring it back in the future.
Okay, so it's failed for tonight. This portion of the policy is failed for tonight. We could see it again next month possibly. My suggestion would be to talk with Commissioner Hill specifically to see if there's something that would be amenable. And then we do still have a second portion of this HR guide revision that you're wanting to bring forward. If you want to go ahead and walk us through that section now.
Yes, we do. We'll move forward with Dave Wimberly and the take-home vehicle policy.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dave Wimberly. I am the Risk Manager for the Unified Government. Tonight, we are proposing a new policy, which is called our take-home vehicle policy. The purpose of this policy is to establish strong internal control systems to ensure the UG vehicles are being used appropriately. Some of the key elements of this take-home vehicle are the use of the vehicles based on a beneficial need for delivery of services of the unified government. Drivers must maintain a valid Kansas driver's license based on the class of vehicle they will be operating. Take-home vehicle authorization form must be completed at the onset or annually thereafter an employee has been granted use of a take-home vehicle. The operators will be subject to an annual motor vehicle checks. The take-home vehicles are only authorized when there is a clear and convincing justification to do so. Also, some departments can set stricter policies subject to county administration's approval.
Renee Ramirez, Director of Human Resources. I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we get into the details of the policy, I would like for us to go over the rationale for creating the new policy, because I think you have to have the rationale to get the full understanding of why we're making the change on the policy. And again, as Dave mentioned, the purpose of this policy is to establish a strong internal control system to ensure that the vehicles are being used properly. That is something that we haven't had before. The second thing is that HR was working on this policy. The legislative auditor took it up and did an audit and came back with some of the same findings that we actually are establishing within this policy. So again, the rationale for creating the policy is that UG liability for the improper use. You know, when you're not properly utilizing unified government vehicles, that is a liability and a risk to our organization, which ultimately costs us money. Again, no current centralized system of authorizing who gets a take-home vehicle and for what business necessity and why. We needed to have a system that was going to track this so that way, if we're asked questions, we have the data and we can make decisions based off of the data. And then no formal policy has ever been in place. So those are the reasons why we wanted to bring forth an overarching umbrella policy. There are specific departments that actually have their own internal policies that could be stricter than the overall policy. The police department has a take-home vehicle policy. The fire department has a take-home vehicle policy, and the public works department also has a take-home vehicle policy. And we've taken all of that information and kind of incorporated some of those things to develop the policy that we're bringing forward to you this evening.
Thank you, Renee. Let's see. Some of the responsible use of a take-home vehicle only authorized employees are permitted to operate this vehicle. There'll be no non-business passengers, family, friends would be prohibited from riding in the vehicle. The vehicle could only be used for a de minimis personal use. That would be permitted. That would be something if an employee needs to pick up a prescription on their way home and it's on the route home, they can't go out of their way to pick up that prescription. That's as an example. Travel will be 50 miles out will be established with 50 miles outside of Wyandotte County is prohibited unless approved by the department. Employees must abide by all state, federal, and local laws while operating the vehicle. Operators must abide by the HRG policies for substance abuse, driver safety, and use of cell phones while using the vehicles. And the operators must inform the UG or their department of any traffic citations or suspensions of their driver's license while operating a UG vehicle or personal vehicle, particularly if that citation affects the status of their driver's license. For example, if it gets suspended or revoked. And then all violations of this policy could result in revocation of the take-home vehicle and or disciplinary action up to and including termination. Some of the main takeaways from this policy is adopting this policy will ensure the unified government is complying with state and federal regulations, which prohibits private use of publicly owned vehicles. An enactment of this policy provides an avenue to revoke access to a take-home vehicle due to a policy violation. And implementation of this policy will reduce the unified government's liability due to unauthorized use. The next steps with adopting this policy is all departments will supply a list of individuals that have been issued a take-home vehicle and complete a take-home vehicle authorization form for each employee that has a take-home vehicle. County administration is to review the department-specific policies before approval. Human Resources will cross-reference department forms with fleet maintenance records to ensure all vehicles are captured, all vehicles that are used as a take-home vehicle are captured. Human Resources will then complete motor vehicle record checks for individuals that have been issued a take-home vehicle. And also Human Resources will ensure individuals authorized to use or drive a take-home vehicle are in the random drug and alcohol pools.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Online, Commissioner Kane or Davis?
Nope, I'm good.
Is there anyone online from the public that wishes to speak on the item?
No hands are raised.
And anyone here in person that wishes to speak? We have no comments from our commissioners and no comments from the public. Is there a motion to adopt this policy as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Clerk, we have a motion and a second. If you'll call the roll, please.
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Human Resources. Really appreciate your work. That does conclude our meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Kane, motion to adjourn.
David, second.
Roll call, please.
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.